So let's get started. I'm just wondering if you can tell us why things do, in fact, feel fucked. And I imagine that you're coming at it from a sort of similar perspective to a lot of us here, and that is the world is radically changed. There is something resembling a collapse going on. So, in your words, why does it feel fucked?
I think it's because our nervous systems have unplugged themselves.
Okay.
And I think the last several thousands of years of human history has rendered us completely disconnected from the parts of our nervous system that feel good.
That's a
And
pretty simple assessment. Yeah.
And those nervous systems that are unplugged are often saturated and drenched in fear, and that has led to eons of people taking power over each other and disregarding our capacity to be free and to choose, degrading our natural environment, inviting us into workplaces to overextend ourselves. Politics and religion have rendered our families disconnected from senses of safety and connection. And I see the collapse that you talk about, Sarah, as very intimate and very personal. And as a psychotherapist that, have navigated my own version of why things feel fucked. I say the first 20 years of my life harmed me. As a queer person on this planet, it was a very unkind upbringing that rendered me unplugged and disconnected.
Yeah.
And then the last 20 years, I've tried to figure it the fuck out, for my own self and my own discovery, but also alongside my clients and go, why do we feel like this? Why are we doing this to each other? And how the fuck are we going to move forward? How are we going to get out of this mess? And I think, a lot of the stuff you've been speaking about, I have found myself talking about too, which is we are not going to change the state of collapse and or chaos and or white privileged men taking power over us and rendering us powerless. But what I hope to do in this book and in my own practice within teams and in my private practice is to help people know how to navigate their way out of it. And it is small changes often in our lives that we have to make because there is no one coming to save us. No one is going to come and change this. It is still going to be a dystopian hellscape for a little while longer because of all of the other forces that are coming. But how do we lead ourselves towards more calm? And I actually think your fringe is something else. I think it's an act of creativity. And I think in reading your article yesterday that you had rendered yourself overwhelmed by, I think, your work in the world, but also the state of the world right now. And the fringe it is an act, isn't it, of immense creativity and control. And you rendered control in the way that you could in this way. So anyway, it's calm and creativity for me, which is our path to another something. It's not perfect. It's not nirvana. This isn't a solve all. This is how do we do this a little bit better than we are?
Yeah, okay. So really what you're saying is that the way that our nervous system has been hijacked by being steered off course for, I would say it's probably been thousands of years gradually, but really probably dialed up in the last couple of 100 years with the Industrial Revolution. That is actually causing the problem, but it's also making us perceive the problem so acutely because our nervous systems are now just so ill-equipped to deal with what we've created and what has been created. Because as you know, that in my work, I explore the fact that it's actually got out of our control now. So it's not like there's these forces, although I would say the billionaire/trillionaire set a force that is quite a direct force in all of this. But it's not like there's this kind of Machiavellian force out there that's trying to get us, right? It's just got bigger than that because that's how systems work. It's got out of our control. And so what you're saying is, specifically the title of your book is Why Do Things Feel Fucked? it is a perception thing. It's also real. Um, and I guess you're trying to get to the chase of, okay, so how are we going to live through this? And that's kind of what my work does as well, because I think to a certain extent, what we're going through, we're going to have to pass through because it has got so big and systems operate in such a way that they've got to play themselves out. And there's going to have to be this cycle of life, death, life, right? Tragically. And so before we go on to what can we do about it, because I know that you're not saying there's an absolute fix, but there is actually a way probably to modulate our nervous system so that we can best pass through this. And as you know, my work is in and around the idea of if we can calm the farm, if we can not lose our shit, if we can be these islands of sanity for each other, then the thing that is most likely to tip us over, which is mass civil unrest, it's going to be us fighting each other. If we can actually pull back from that edge, then we've probably got the best chance of survival. But anyway, we'll get to that in a moment. But in your work as a psychotherapist in Sydney, which for me, I've come to realise is peak all of this. I think Sydney in Australia is kind of almost like a microcosm or I don't know, a really potent part of the world where a lot of what we're talking about is happening for a whole bunch of reasons. Neoliberalism is absolutely at zenith in Sydney. Australia is literally one of the wealthiest countries in the world and is very media literate. And a lot of the problematic media comes from Australia, the Murdoch press. And so I think there's a whole lot of things going on in Australia and also our colonial past and the white male supremacy that comes from that colonial past, which I think comes from the guilt and shame of the ease.
It is all of these things, and it's the untended grief that
Yes.
we do not reckon with as a community, that we walk, literally our privilege is on the backs of Black and brown bodies.
Yeah.
And I think there's a part in my book that is about the roots of disconnection, and it directly talks at this as one of the reasons why things feel so fucked is this unaddressed trauma that we are benefiting from. And it's massive. Sorry, I just had to add that in because it's so integral to this conversation, for sure.
Why don't you pick up from there and tell us what you're observing amongst your clients? Because you're also a coach, but you're a psychotherapist. So what do you, and you're a life observer as a writer. So what are you observing in and around, I mean, I will say men, because I think men are struggling the most for the reasons that you've just pointed to. But, you know, I think everybody is struggling. What are you seeing in Sydney, Australia? What are you seeing? How is this pain presenting itself? How are people feeling things are fucked? And how are they interpreting that fuckedness?
Well, I don't know if they can interpret it. I think they're so fractured inside of themselves and in their life that they can't actually observe this. We're observing it on their behalf, Sarah, but are they able to observe it for themselves? So I don't know, but my assessment is we're cooked. Our brains and our bodies are cooked. And, you know, we sit in such immense privilege, but we have never been so unwell and unplugged. You know, I've got friends and loved ones that can't message back. You know, it's like we're not actually connecting. We're not actually in real relationship. What we're in is we're in those parts of the world that are productive, that I am, you know, possible for everything else but safe human relationship.
Yeah.
It's a huge challenge. So we're on overdrive. So I will walk into a team. I was in a large team on Monday, and I talk about the nervous system toolkit that I've got to decode, you know, what the hell is going on? Why do we feel so like we have the accelerator pedal on and the brake on at the same time? And you talk about men and, you know, the privileges that might come with white, straight men. It's interesting because I talk about the nervous system map and I go, where do you live on this map? Are you in the activated zones or are you in calm regulation? And you know what often happens? Is the queer people and women, the queer and the women people are sitting there and they're going, you know what, I'm jacked up. I am activated. I am burning out. I am Yeah. I'm over it. And the men find their way to saying, no, I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good. Someone called me over
Real.
in a workshop the other day and said, you know, what do- how do you make sense of this when a colleague of mine goes home and doesn't have to think about work? They don't have to about the problems in the world. They don't have to decode, anxiousness or stressness. I said, yeah, this is their privilege. This is their immense privilege to be calm and connected and okay and or oblivious. Now you Sarah described this as the unchecked, the checked out, sorry.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's what we're describing here, which is this. I think people are so unplugged and checked out of what is happening inside their bodies,
Mm.
what is happening inside of the bodies opposite them. This is the empathy gap. And
Yeah.
that, I think, there's a book by Jonathan Kennedy. I had to look it up as you were speaking called Pathogenesis. Have you heard of it? It's about the history of bacteria and viruses and how it shaped the human experience. It's fucking phenomenal. It's a brilliant book. And he says his conjecture is that it actually started with agriculture when we took the turn from restorative regenerative practices in small hunter-gathering groups and we allowed one man to own a plot of land and us to toil it on his profitable behalf, that was the turn. And we are in systems right now in our lives which have encoded that as normal.
Mm.
So it is so normal to be in this setup that I think the majority of us sitting here in Australia are not sensing and seeing the reality of it, let alone the reality of it in other, cultures in the world and in other places. How this is really screwing us over and creating a great unwellness in our bodies and in our relationships in our lives.
I mean, it's a little bit like observing fascism creeping in, and the way that fascism creeps in, and everybody thinks like, that whole thing of first they come for the women, then they come for the Jews, and then they come for the brown people, and still I ignored it, and basically by the time they come for you, there's nobody left to defend you. There's that sort of thing. And I think that's what we're observing. Everybody's going, it's not going to affect me. I'm all good for now. And I've got to hold up this system because it serves me currently. But I think there is a sneaking suspicion. There's a squirm, I think, at the heart of a lot of people that it is going to come for them, that this isn't going to hold. And I think there's a little bit of a last days of Rome, like, let's just max this and just shut down and pretend it's not happening because it serves us.
Yeah.
Also a lack of education, lack of experience in processing these big emotions. But like, I know you're about to say something, and I'll just add a question onto it because it might feed into it. How's it going to play out for and I will say men again. I'm not going to apologise for it, but I think the men in Australia in particular are both struggling, although ostensibly it doesn't look like it yet because they're going off surfing and they're sort of avoiding things and they're going home and sleeping at night while the rest of us are fretting. So it kind of doesn't look like it for now, but I really do think it's going to take hold in different ways. And yeah, I'm just wondering, you sort of talk about how the nervous system is playing out in our nervous system. So what's that looking like when you're speaking to men? They're saying, oh, no, I'm all pretty good. Are you like, oh, okay, lucky you? Or are you seeing something else, something deeper? Because I think, because we're seeing it in the men, right? But yeah, and I guess what I'm trying to get at is, what's going to become of this? Like, are men going to be hurting violently soon? Is this what you're seeing?
I don't know. Look, the men in my workshops are very different to the men that show up in my private practice. The men that show up in my private practice, some are queer people in male bodies, but in the gender spectrum, in the beautiful gender spectrum. But the straight white men that come to see me, they feel completely powerless and they don't understand why they're not feeling powerful. And I think, this is so multifaceted and so complicated. So I'm going to speak really simply about things that are really fucking more complicated and complex, right? But that gnawing, sorry, what was that?
Hopefully everybody who's listening is smart enough and
Yeah.
delicate No, there's
Yeah.
nuance about it. So they,
There's nuance here. There is nuance here. There's complexity. There's a multifaceted relationship. But that feeling of powerlessness is hidden to them. They're not thinking and seeing and orientated like you are and I are, Sarah, or maybe some of the majority of the people listening to us. Neurologically, fascism is born, I believe, now this is a hot take, out of a dysregulated nervous system experience. It is black and white thinking. It's actually a disorder of the brain. When our nervous system is so activated, we lose blood flow and neural circuitry flow into the front two parts of our brain. When we don't do that, the brain divides itself, and all we've got is this black and white thinking with no empathy.
Yeah.
This is fascism. This is the root of fascism. Now, I don't know where straight men are headed. I'm imagining you are watching the front page of the Sydney Morning Herald like everyone else yesterday with these fascists on the steps of New South Wales Parliament. And these people decided to go unmasked, right? There's a boldness.
Correct. They don't feel they have to hide.
There's a boldness to this. Now, it scares me to my core, but my question to you, Sarah.
Yes.
And maybe we could answer this together. Is how do we reach not the fascists, because I don't know about reaching into the fascist mindset and resolving that, but how do we reach into the great the checked out? How do we help transform them, the majority, so that violent fascism doesn't return into our streets? How do we do that? What's your take on this?
Well, I think about this a lot, about where actual change is and what we need to be doing. And, my book covers this. And where I'm going to be heading next, now that I've emerged from my dark patch and cut a fringe and and I'm ready to get back out there. I really think that we've just got to make the new way of doing things sexier than the status quo. And so I think we've just got to get on with being and embodying, and I know that, this is sort of partially your message, the new way, the sustainable way, the way that is actually in congruence and alignment with the rest of life. And then people will see. I mean, this is how humans work. We pick up on a vibe, right? And if it's a good vibe, our nervous systems will gravitate towards it. So if we're living in tenderheartedness, if we're living in ease and congruence, and we don't look like we're having a shit-ass time, and we're also feeling and emoting and able to build community in and around those big emotions, it will come across as an island of sanity, and will gradually get people to come over, and with a lot less efforting. And I think that's really key, because we've run out of effort for this kind of thing.
How do you hold your advocacy and your calm at the same time?
I'm so not a calm person, because it's really my love of life and my love of humanity. And I mentioned this in the last post I wrote, and that I went and saw an astrologer. He's a Vedic astrologer, and there's a connection to a bunch of things, which it'll come out maybe eventually, because I think there's a few more steps in this process. Yeah,
there's layers here. Yeah.
He basically said to me, he basically said to me that the way that I've always coped is I don't really operate full time on the planet, if that makes sense. I have to go off into, he said, a hovercraft, and this is getting a bit personal, where I'm up here and I'm basically trying to access not my wisdom, because I'm not a particularly wise person, but the wisdom of life and seeing patternings and seeing lots of people. And then that is actually a blissful state for me. So I am blissful when I'm in this space of accessing connection to the wisdoms that we're talking about here. And so as long as I don't try to come down and bludgeon people over the head with it, I can hang on to that bliss state and I can come down and connect. And I've set up a life now in my early 50s where this is what I do. I write and I talk with people like you, and I have a community of 60,000 people who are writing and connecting on the same level and craving this level of tender-hearted connection. And so that's how I do it. I've got blinkered vision to a certain extent. But yeah, I literally no other path is left for me. I've tried fitting in. I mean, have a look at my bloody CV. I did mainstream, like commercial to shit, like editor of Cosmopolitan, host of MasterChef, working for the Murdoch Press. I've done all of that kind of thing. And it basically took me to an edge where I went, okay, the only way I can survive is actually renouncing a whole heap of stuff and paring everything back to the essences. And the only essence left is this connection and this bliss state that I gravitate towards.
So what I'm going to invite you to unpack with me is,
oh God, you're such a coach.
This is the therapist. The therapist is the coach. Let me assure you. You'll speak to my coaching clients and they know that I'm holding them in a therapeutic conversation first. But I invite us to think about this. That bliss state you're talking about is a nervous system state.
Yeah.
And it's ventral vagal complex. It is the vagal nerve connecting the right hemisphere of your brain with your heart center and your guts. Now, some in the mystery of the human experience could call this the God nerve, right? This is the nerve that allows us to access deepness and vastness in our human experience. This is the thing the fascists are so far away from. Now, but we're unpacking this question, which is how do we get to the unchecked, the checked out, right? How do we get to the checked out? It is holding bliss, as you say so eloquently. It is holding the infinite.
Yeah.
Whilst we hold our anger.
Yeah.
It is at the same time, it is holding it at the same time so that our advocacy doesn't burn us out. Now, the thing that I worry about is when I sit with an activist and they've burnt themselves out, right? They find themselves with a hoarse voice, spiritually, energetically speaking. And I wonder for them and with them, I wonder how they hold the advocacy, the assertiveness, the activism, and the rage whilst they still have a hand on calm, connected, curious. It is the generative parts of our nervous system. Now, we'll have to have a much broader conversation. I've mapped the nervous system to tell us how do we have dual states again? Because you know what those fascists actually want from you is you to be in one nervous system state and hold one thing to be true at once. And so do the systems that have disconnected us. They want us in those jacked up states so that we are just like them.
Yeah.
And we all co-sync, right? We're all co-regulating, and we're all co-regulating in our feeds except yours. Up that nervous system map towards less capacity to think and feel through mine and your experiences. And it's no wonder we're in this fucking mess. It's no wonder.
To answer your question a little bit deeper, and I do want to get to some of the neuroscientific stuff that you've found that people might be able to take away with them. But one of the things that I really allow for, which I think is also radical, is in terms of sticking it up the fascists and the haters and the people that, is as you say, to do both and to allow for that and to allow for the messiness that comes with that. The reason I can do the work I do is because I allow myself to rage and I feel it and I punch mattresses and I let that come out. And
you also shared yesterday about the whale, the Bob, right? Yes, and that is the grief.
takes over, and I don't stress about it anymore. Before, when I was younger and I had no guidance on this, I didn't know what was happening to me when I would become like that and when I did other weird things, but it takes me to the floor. It's not a dramatic thing because I'm here in my bloody apartment. No one sees it. No one cares. But it's like my entire body collapses to the floor and I've just got to stay there and wail, and I tear at my stomach, and it's like it's so appropriate. And I allow for that. And then I also allow that 5 minutes later, I feel this incredible joy, and it's all of that. And so I think, Seth Godin, I've quoted him before in a similar format. He says, and he said this to me once, he said, people like us do things like this, and he used it. He says that that's the greatest sales techniques, is when a brand doesn't try to ram anything down anyone's throat. It just says, people like us do things like this. So as an activist, I'm sorry, I'm going to look like this, and I'm going to turn up on stage, and sometimes somebody's going to do my hair all fancy and with makeup and everything. But people like me, who looks, like the woman from a Omo commercial, we do things like this. We normalize the fuck out of weirdness. We normalize the fuck out of fierceness. And I used a line on an Instagram post last night: fierce lightness. Like that is we've got to.
That's the ventral vagal and the sympathetic nervous system chiming together. When you talk about fierce and lightness at the same time, that's holding both. How beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's also, to answer the question, perimenopause is fucking amazing because you just are so fierce. All of the stuff comes up. You're crying. It's messy. It is horrible. It's dark. But you just get to some absolute truths, and it sort of seems very appropriate. But let's cross back to you, because we are here to talk about your thinking in your book. What are some of the neuroscientific kind of findings, like the pervy ones that you like to sort of bring out at dinner parties, to go, did you know, blah, 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 in and around, I guess, that toolkit concept that people can draw on for coping with this?
Well, if we want to head to that territory in our nervous system that creates higher levels of calm, connectedness, and creativity.
And fierceness.
It actually is. What's that?
Fierceness.
And fierceness, well, that's to hold the other zone of our nervous system at the same time. We hold that calm, connection, creativity, and curiosity, that openness, that bliss state. And then we can better hold fierceness that helps people transform. But to get into that calm, connected state, it is all hooked into the infrastructure in your body and mind that sees your face, my auditory nerve, the auditory nerve that is in the frequency of the human voice. It's decoding your facial expressions to see if I'm safe. It is noticing how you are in the world. And when you're in that state, I am too. And this amplifies it. It is actually our capacity to connect human to human, which offers us additional bandwidth to be able to be fierce and blissful and light at the same time. Now, if we don't have a safe person,
you're in touch and feel the other humans.
Yes, but we're also doing it right now because we are seeing each other's faces. I think the human body is pretty complicated, but it's also kind of simple. In small hunter-gathering groups, we needed that non-verbal way to say, hey, we're good. We're good. We actually are doing that, me and you, right now, by looking at each other's faces. And I think this is underrepresented in our discourse about this. It's not noticed. And so we text back or we Teams chat at work. We don't actually face-to-face connect. So, we need to do more of these connections. And the reason why you have respite here in your community and in these conversations is because you get to reach out and have a conversation with another like-minded person. And that feels safe. It grows. It literally grows our neural capacity for that bliss, that lightness. If we can't do that, if we don't have a safe person to connect with, because there are people in our communities that can't, there are other things like elongating our exhale. We have a short, sharp breath in, but if we elongate the exhale, we're down-regulating our activated nervous system and up-regulating that green zone of the nervous system. It's this green zone here, which is the bliss state we're talking about. Cold water,
Mm,
Last night I was doing sauna and cold plunge because I'm pretty activated. I launch a book next week, so I'm in like bloody yellow go mode a lot. I needed that sauna and that cold plunge to kind of down regulate my nervous system and find a different spaciousness. It's these things that are the foundation for what happens next.
yeah.
And what happens next is
Well,
the part of our chat, maybe.
yeah, we've got to keep see it as a job almost. Like it's kind of like cleaning your teeth, each day. It's just what you do. And that's almost like it's our responsibility now as sensitive people on the planet, that these are just basic things and they work. They really do work. Cold water.
It is called self-leadership. We have to lead ourselves to more calm and connection so we can do the sort of fierce and calm that invites the checked out to check in, because they are going to become more checked out if we're in those pure states and we are not going to move anywhere. And so I think, to give you your more words, it is a self leadership, because the systems around us are hijacking our nervous systems for more activation and more dysregulation. We open up our phones, we walk into our workplaces. Do you know 14% of Australians have a positive or good relationship with their workplaces right now?
Yeah.
And then we're trying to bring those people into this discourse. They're not even fucking ready. They're just burning out at work. And so our upgraded nervous systems of connection will create better connections with people to change the hearts and minds away from any of these dominant belief systems that are actually going to cause major disruption. But we have to do that one thing, one person, one small step at a time. We must.
Mm, mm. But the thing is, it's a win-win because it feels good for yourself and you're actually making that impact. It's less.
And you have more capacity in this state to do more because your immune system increases. You have more pleasure and enjoyment in your life with these dual states chiming at the same time. You are now more possible. And so is our work in the world. We can get up and go do the next thing. And sometimes that's fighting, right?
Mm,
Um, and so, yeah.
yeah. Um, okay. Well, look, I think I try to keep these to sort of 30 minutes. I always run over. But do you want to just do a little bit of a spiel for your book? It's coming out next week. The wonderful Brendan Fredericks, who's our kind of mutual mate, an awesome guy, he is your agent. But just tell us a bit about the book, why people might be interested and want to look out for it.
Well, it's at the heart of this conversation, really. It's the intimate relationship with the things that we get to talk about here. It starts in the landscape of disconnection and why we have found ourselves in this mess. It goes straight into the nervous system because I think this is the site of immense opportunity for change.
Yeah.
If we can decode holding two things at once inside of our nervous systems, we're not only more well, as we have just described, we can actually influence and help other people step forward into their version of calm and connected
Right.
too. And that is the antidote. Then I go into self-leadership, and there's three roles. How do we
Mm-hmm.
know from that foundation of calm and any other state? How do we know ourselves and our uniqueness more? Because a lot of people who are checked out, Sarah, don't know themselves. They think they know themselves through the eyes of another, but they
Mm-hmm.
actually haven't decoded their own uniqueness from the inside out. And that's the self-explorer role. The second role is choice maker, how to make great choices, creative choices like cutting a fringe, not the narrow choice of getting a dog in a small apartment. And then the third one is the co-creator role. This is transforming the systems of power over us, the domination, the force, the control that comes out of really activated nervous systems, transforming it in our relationships, our intimate relationships first. Co-creator is shared power with each other. It is, how do we stand side by side to create shared power in the relationships close to us and then have ripple effects.
Yeah.
And I swear this is going to end really soon. The last part of the book is about codifying self-leadership in our lives by getting the right support. We need to drop the fairy tale that one person will cut it, because they're
Yeah.
not going to cut it. We need a community around us. We need a system of support. The last chapter was written for me because I didn't know a lot about how to create belonging in the systems around us. And so the last chapter is a blueprint for belonging. How do we extend the system of connection from inside of us out
Mhm.
into the systems we can influence? I'm thinking the workplaces we work in and inhabit. I'm thinking the local community organizations we need to become activists in and activate connection in. And of course, I'm thinking about the bigger systems as well. So that's the end of the book, all in the landscape of belonging.
Said that last bit was for you about sort of finding a way to belong and be part of something. Can you just tell us maybe two things that have worked for you that you've actually done? You've actually done the thing that you've said to do in your book. Like what? Can you just give some tangible examples? Because I think people are craving this kind of thing. They want to know, well, what's everybody else doing? Because it's really hard to find these ways of community building.
It is. And I
Oh,
think for me,
one, by the way, Brendan, who you're just feverishly in the background doing all the promo work for you, you could feel a sense of belonging by going to the Sydney book launch, 18th of November at Books Kino on George Street. So that would be one step. But what else?
I didn't see that. I think, for me, I felt like I didn't belong anywhere. I grew up a queer kid in a straight world in the backdrop of the HIV epidemic and mercilessly teased and really abused for the first 13 years of my life by people around me. I then, messily joined a cult and, got rejected from that cult. And so there's all these other things that happened. For me, me personally, I had to change my response to building connection with other people. And I
So
had to have a
how do you do it like at the moment? What are you doing that, I cut a bloody fringe. What are you doing that sort of has probably taken you out on a little bit of a limb, but has worked for you?
well, I had to downregulate how dangerous building relationships with people and upregulate the safety of that. And I had to be bold enough to go and find other communities. Now,
Like,
when I started to think about this book, I joined an authors community and I found a rich and diverse group of people that I could lean into for maybe
mm,
the first times, and then bold enough to have the sort of conversations and connections that may have disagreement in them, but have a lot of deep love and respect in them at the same time.
yeah, in this authors group. Sorry, I'm being tedious because what I do in these kinds of interviews is I always drill people down to the tangible examples. So you've joined an authors group. Is it online or in person?
Online and in person, hybrid.
And are you able to share the name of it in case anybody else, or is it sort of public?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's the expert authors community. Kelly Irving will love the fact that we have just mentioned this here. So, yes, the expert authors community, they bring people together around a curriculum, but they plug like minded people together. It is the experiences and the people that have made all the difference. And they're the new wave of connections that I have in my life. And I, I
This is
didn't
what
see that. I didn't see that before.
And I'm going to tell you now, people are going to be asking you for the actual minutiae things that you do. So that is an awesome one. And Jackie Clark has obviously, your mate is obviously aware of that group. What's another one? Another thing that you do. I mean, some people, I've spoken to have started, just going and randomly knocking on neighbours' doors with muffins or something like that. But is there anything else you've done that kind of other people might feel inspired by that you've done that is, like a little bit weird and radical, I suppose?
Well, I spend a lot of my time thinking about how do we have a better relationship with ourselves so we can have a better relationship with each other.
Mm.
Um, for me, I live a really cornered life in so many ways, Sarah. I am so passionate about my work. I, I'm sitting here thinking about, gosh, fuck. Most of the stuff that I am doing right now is on behalf of my work in the world. Now, there is one thing. There is one thing. So I just ended a 13-year relationship.
Mhm.
That decision to exit that relationship was a really challenging one for me and him. And
Part of
it
the
was turning away from what wasn't working was a big part of me finding a way to better connections, right? So so I actually have bought a motorhome.
so
And
that's what van life. Okay, there we go.
I am traveling around Australia for 12 months. I'm calling it at the moment the Why Things Feel Fucked tour. But in
Okay.
many ways, this is my bid for connection because I'm actually in a bit of a drought of really strong connected relationships right now. And I knew that I couldn't sign another lease. I knew I couldn't sign up to a mortgage again. And so I bought a van and I'm traveling around Australia. Now, I'm having a conversation, I hope, with Australians about why things feel fucked for them. But I'm also in the market for deeper and richer relationships as I go. And I've been out for 3 months now, in Sydney now for the launch, but it has been fucking fascinating. The people I have been able to deeply connect, the person that needs boiled water for their noodles, and they
Mm,
sit down for a 3-hour conversation from Denmark. So this is the next thing that I'm doing to find more connection in my life and diversify my connections.
yeah, yeah. I do the same thing. I love the people that I meet in truck stops, and I've known truck stops all my life. That sounds very very weird, but I've hitchhiked. I used to do mountain bike riding, big long distances where I'd have to stay in truck stops for the night with truck drivers, and then of course staying in sort of a camper van. Often I'm just sleeping alongside long haul truck drivers and all kinds of people, and it is so beautiful and enriching, and it's just so important to get out there and just see people beyond the Sydney bubble, and just to
The,
really
the
humans are
other,
diverse and way more interesting than we realize when we get
you know
outside of
what
our
else? Do you know what else out in the van I've noticed? The deep peace and calm of being in the natural environment for the majority of my day.
yeah.
A revelation to my life. This access being wrapped by nature for the majority of my time in a week.
Huh?
When I come back into and it's only been 3 months, but when I come back into suburban city based environments, I feel the clawing happening again. And
Mm,
so one of the things I want to embark on this year is not only learning how to savor again, or for the first time to actually savor, but also to find more connection back to nature. And I think we are in part of this why things feel fucked is because nature has been completely eradicated for the majority of our life and our days.
our connection to it. No, I'm with you on all that. Absolutely. Hey, we'll have to end it there, but thank you so much for anyone who's joined in late. I'll post this on my Substack, probably in a couple of hours, but you might do the same if you want to. You're absolutely welcome to.
Definitely.
Andrew Sloan, thank you so much. I'll put a link to your Substack, and good luck with the tour. Good luck with your van life. Give Brendan a very, very big, big hug for me. And I think Emily Buchanan, who's my here in Paris, she's a leadership coach. I mentioned that she's very keen to read the book, so I might try to get a copy and pass it on to her. She does work in a similar.
Brendan
Yeah,
has already sent you a copy, I think, so he needs to get it to Paris.
right. I'll pass it on to Emily. All right.
Thank you
Let's
so much, Sarah. Thank
get
you. Be well. Keep well.
doing the email. Emily, I'll connect you to Brendan. All right. This is nice. I love these kinds of things. All right. See you later.
Keep well. Bye.